Hi, this is Marc Reece with Kopin Corporation. I'm the Digital Marketing Director for GoldenEye, which will be released later this year. And today I have the extreme pleasure of interviewing Greg Truman, who has 25 years of experience in VR and AR. He built his first head-mounted display 25 years ago, and for 15 years he's been running LCOS company, Fourth Dimension Displays. In 2011, Fourth Dimension Displays joined Kopin, and now he's part of the Kopin team, and we're very fortunate to have him. He came in today, I think specifically for Facebook Live, but we're gonna interview Greg. I want to introduce him without further ado, and we'll get started. And if you guys have any questions, by all means, please don't hesitate to comment or ask a question in there. But we're talking AR and VR. So Greg, thank you for taking your time to talk.
No problem.
I guess the biggest question that I have is tell us a little bit about what you do at Fourth Dimension Displays, and more importantly, with how you incorporate that into Kopin.
Yep.
and kind of your role.
Okay, so I'm now responsible for all the micro display operations across Kopin. So that covers all of our LCD operations and all of our liquid crystal and silicon operations. The LCD manufacturing is here in sunny Westborough. You can see the scenery outside in Massachusetts. And our LCOS operations are in Scotland, usually less sunny, just across the river from Edinburgh in Fife. And between the two companies, we produce something like, this year we'll produce about 250,000 micro displays.
All right.
So a decent number. And we employ about 110 people across those two facilities. We do supply some consumer products, so we supply displays from here in Westborough to things like first-person viewers for drone racing. But and we do supply military displays as well. We have quite a lot of displays in use in things like thermal weapon sights, pilot head-mounted displays, which are AR systems themselves. And various applications like that. But a lot of our business, and the majority by volume, is in industrial and enterprise areas. And this ranges from some very niche activities, like supplying liquid crystal and silicon displays, which are used within super resolution microscopy. There's a technique called lattice light sheet microscopy, which was invented by Nobel Prize winner Eric Betzig, and we supply a key component that's used by universities and researchers building these lattice light sheet microscopes, but obviously a very niche industry, line of business. On the higher volume side, we here in Westborough again, we produce display modules that go into enterprise wearables. So one example of a design-in is GoldenEye Infinity.
Yep.
But we also supply Vuzix's M300, and we supplied the M100 before that. We supply the RealWear HMT1. We supply the displays to Google Glass, Fujitsu, Lenovo, West Unitis, Iristic in Belgium. So a large proportion of the enterprise wearable industry uses displays from Kopin.
You know, what's interesting is our CEO, John Fan, always talks about Kopin has been creating AR, VR technology pretty much long before the technology existed. Yeah. And we've been a player behind the scenes and now coming out with the Solos wearables, like you mentioned, GoldenEye. My question for you is, when you're building technology for enterprise, like smart screens, wearables, and smart glasses, et cetera, what are some of the most important factors that we have to consider and when we're introducing them to the enterprise, and when enterprise companies are getting ready to adopt?
Right. So the first thing is that we are a long way down the food chain, whether we like it or not. We're a long way down from the end user. So the end user, the volume market for enterprise is really technicians, people doing maintenance, people doing working on bits of equipment where they want access to information, to drawings, to data at their point of work. That's the hands-free use case. That's the real sort of prime use case we see at the moment. Now, if you think about the technician here, they're then working for an enterprise which has selected a set of hardware and software for them to use. So they're not really the end customer. That's the person paying the money, but then their employer is the person paying the money. That company is generally going to buy something. They want a complete solution. They will often procure it from some sort of integrator, someone who buys the wearables, buys the software and packages it together, integrates it with their back-end systems, things like that. Or they may buy the hardware separately and some applications to run on it. But the key thing is that it's the software and the way the software integrates with their business, their operational IT, their business model that is important. And we like to think of the hardware being the important bit, but the reality is we're just a vehicle, a tool for these guys to run their software on. And so for the technician who's out in the field, we're providing nothing different from, say, their mobile phone hardware, or indeed their vehicle, or their work tools, or anything else. It's a piece of equipment for them to use. And vitally important is the software that goes on top of that. I'm lucky enough that I'm also a board director of Interware, which is a UK company operating in that area. It has a work product it calls Workflow Plus, which is a human process management software. And so I see the picture from that end as well. And they're dealing with the real end customers. So I get a view on the market a few places above us sort of in the food chain. And it is all about, it's totally about productivity. It's about being able to actually calculate the improvement. We like to think of this equipment as being sort of sexy equipment and whatever. And when you go to a company and say, do you want to try this out? Or do you want to buy some units for a pilot? There's sort of the sexiness bit does come in there. But to get from those first 5 or 10 units to actually get them to buy 1,000 units, that's only going to happen when there's a really genuine business case. It's got to have a return on investment. It's got to probably have quite a quick return on investment that covers not just the hardware, but also the software purchase, the time taken to integrate that into their systems, and the training time for the technicians or the workers who are going to use it. The company's going to look at the whole of that before saying, I want to adopt this technology. And this year is a crucial year in that process. As lots of people will say, there were a lot of pilots last year, but not a lot of adoptions. 2018 is the crucial sort of inflection point where we go from companies buying 5 or 10 units to companies saying, yeah, I've done my trial, I've calculated the results, I've costed out what it's going to cost, and I'm going to get a payback in 9 months if I adopt this technology, and therefore I want to buy 1,000 units from you.
One of the biggest challenges that I've seen, and even talking when I had AWE and talking to some of the people, is really what they call pilot purgatory, where these companies have the best of it. Let's bring this in, let's test it out, but they never get past that testing it out. And where do you see wearables at in terms of pushing it over the edge to go from that pilot purgatory to adoption for enterprise?
Right. So if you go back 12 months, go back to summer of 2017. No one could prove that we were going to get out of pilot purgatory. There was a Paul Travis of Vuzix quoted something like they'd done 930 trials or something. And then you look at the quantity of units that they did, and you realize that most customers were taking perhaps 5 units, perhaps 10 units, something like that. Modest quantities per customer, and no escape from that. Not pilot. Now, pilot purgatory implies you stay there forever. The word purgatory bit of it, but there was definitely no proof that the industry was going to escape 12 months ago. In my view, and this is looking at the quantities of displays that we're selling, but also the quantities that our customers are selling to their customers. In my view, I think we're out of that now. I think the leading companies are now selling quantities of 500 or 1,000 units to a single enterprise. That's not a pilot anymore. When you're selling 1,000 or something, that's adoption. So I think the big change that I've seen over the last 12 months, and thankfully it happened, it could have gone the other way, is that we've gone from this pilot purgatory to real adoption. Now, you're still probably only talking 10 enterprises globally that have really adopted it, perhaps 15. It's that sort of quantity. So for most people, they won't yet have seen this appear in their workplace, or they won't have seen a technician outside using it, because there's not that many enterprises that have really adopted it. And a lot of those enterprises are sort of out of sight and out of mind, in the sense that if someone's working at the top of a wind farm tower in the middle of the North Sea, you and I don't see them using an enterprise wearable, but they are using them. But I think what you're going to see over the next 12 months is you will see people turn up in your workplace, from contractors, from power companies, water companies. You'll see people out on the street working up towers wearing them 12 months, 24 months from now, because the quantities are going to become much more prevalent. You will find people who are your next door neighbours who have been issued them at work. You'll see guys in airports, airline maintenance using them. You can't really see that today, even though it's happening, because just the quantity is very small. But it's going to become more and more evident. But I think if you keep going back to the question is, did we get stuck in pilot purgatory, or have we achieved escape velocity from that? I think the answer is we've achieved escape, and companies have been able to demonstrate a return on investment in using the technology.
On the return on investment side, a couple of things that I've heard is, one is cost of units, and then the other one too is people adopting. Even John Fan talks about this. We have to convince people to wear something on their head that they're traditionally not comfortable in wearing.
Yeah. So I mean, to take those perhaps in the other way around, the one about wearing is much less of an issue in enterprises, and especially in technicians, industrial workers, especially out on sites, than it is for a consumer. You or I want to look cool. I mean, obviously we haven't got a home, but we'd like to look cool. Whereas, if someone's working, say, on a bridge at altitude, or on a wind farm, they have a whole bunch of equipment they are required to wear. PPE, reinforced boots, waterproof equipment, reflective jackets, helmets, safety glasses. They are already used to being told you must wear this, and this. Being told by your employer in your pretty well-paid job, because these people are doing very highly skilled jobs, that this is another piece of equipment. And by the way, it not only allows you to do it quicker, it's safer, because you're now not trying to hold a mobile phone to read something, or a tablet. You're actually getting it hands-free. So now both your hands are free to hold on to work. They'll wear it. There's not really any choice for them. It's a whole different ballgame in consumer. But for enterprise, the employee will wear it. It's just like all their other equipment they're required to wear, their tool belts and everything else they've got to wear. Now, coming back to the question about return on investment, I think the key thing here is it's not, and I said this earlier, it's not just the hardware. Say you're going to buy 1,000 wearables at $750, $1,000 each. You and I think, you've now got to justify $750K, $1 million procurement, but you haven't. You've got all the software costs, and that's going to be per unit, per year, plus the software maintenance. So you've got to do that. You've also got to pay someone to integrate it into your back-end IT system, some of which are horrible legacy systems. And so you're going to have someone who's an Oracle specialist or an SAP specialist who's going to come and tie it in. That's another cost. You've then also got the training cost. That's not just the trainer, but taking the person out of the line for a day or two while you train them on the equipment. You add all that up, it's not just that 750K or $1 million. It's going to be quite a lot more. Now that's sort of like a negative aspect to it, but companies are demonstrating relatively easily the benefits of it. So they are being able to show that there is a relatively quick payback period in terms of using it. So I don't think for a lot of the applications that people are commonly talking about it being used, I don't think we should worry too much about whether the payback can be justified or the investment can be justified, because we're seeing that people are are making that decision pretty easily, and the numbers are quite compelling.
One of the things I liked about Steve Jobs is he kind of had this model where he told us what we needed.
Yeah.
Do you think that the industry is listening to what these enterprise organizations actually need in terms of wearables, or are we saying, here, this is what you need? I mean, what do you see in terms of organizations?
That's a good question. I think at the moment, at a very high level, customer enterprises who are users are feeding back. And what I mean by at a high level, they're saying, for my technicians, I don't want an AR helmet with projected images and whatever. I need something that gives them information, but still gives them their full viewing area. I'm not really interested at the moment in trying to project stuff over eyes. You imagine how complex that would be if you're at the top of a wind turbine in the middle of the ocean. You just want the information down here. You don't want it all over your field of view.
Right.
You're in a dangerous environment. So there's at a very high level, they're saying this isn't for us at the moment. It might be in the future. It's not now. This type of form factor is what we want. And then what they're saying is, we've tried company X, we've tried company Y, we've tried company Z. We found that X didn't really meet our requirements, and we like Y, and we really like Z. So they're telling you what they want in terms of sort of deselecting solutions that they don't want. But I don't think we've yet got to the point where they're saying, what I really want is a product that has this spec, because they just haven't got enough experience. It'll probably come.
Yeah.
But right now, it's largely GoldenEye, Vuzix, RealWear, who are saying, here's our solution. We've listened to all your concerns and constraints, and this is our offering to meet your requirements. Rather than them saying exactly, I want this resolution, this weight, this form factor, they aren't that sophisticated yet to be able to really specify that. On the software side, I know they do feedback a lot of it, because that's sort of easier for them to say, I need to be able to integrate to this, or I need to have this capability, or I need to have that. They know exactly what they want, and they're much better able to specify very tightly what their requirements are.
So in terms of as we're making this technology, it seems for the longest time that everything is smaller, lighter, and smaller. Do you think that's the way to go? Or do you think it's really a more functional unit that's the size that it needs to be?
I think it depends on the requirements. Let's take probably arguably the sort of heaviest and rugged one, which is the RealWear HMT1, which was originally based as Kopin's licensed GoldenEye, the original GoldenEye prior to GoldenEye Infinity technology. So we know a lot about that product, and we supply the displays for it. Know the company very well. That's quite a hefty product. It's a rugged product, but it is very robust. You can drive a vehicle over it. You can just drop it and sort of throw it around. And there are environments where that is absolutely necessary. That real robustness is absolutely necessary, and is far more important than being light and petite and small. Equally, there's going to be other applications where the lightness of the form factor is dominant, and the waterproof aspects, the robustness aspects are not as important. So, going back to the wind turbine in the ocean, the wind turbine in the ocean environment is very different from picking in a warehouse. One's indoors, one's outdoors. One's got all the weather, and one could be dropped, and he's got to fly out there and be winched down and all this. The other one is the guy's going to come into the factory, put it on, and go and do their job, and it's not going to be battered or anything. So, I think there's going to be a natural gravitation between some applications suit one person's product, and other applications suit another product, depending on the size, form factor, robustness, etc.
What's interesting with the technology, and again at AWE, and even at home, we have the VR set for the PlayStation VR set for the kids. And my stepson asked me, he said, are people really going to walk around at work with this on their heads? And I said, I don't know. He says, and I was trying to explain to him the difference between AR and VR. In your opinion, and I'm not holding you to this, but in your opinion, when I spoke to Charlie Fink last
Yeah.
time when we did this, he said that really enterprise is going to adopt AR over VR. What are your thoughts? Because for the
Right.
clunky factor and the
Yeah, I mean VR is pure VR is isolating you from the outside world. That has very few enterprise applications, if you think about it.
Yeah.
How often in this factory, in these offices, would you have a business benefit of being isolated? Perhaps if you're doing a conference call, instead of just on the disemboweled phone, you're actually in a virtual environment with your colleagues. But most of the time, there's no business benefit, there's no business use of being in VR. So I think for virtual reality, it's very limited. The next question is sort of how sophisticated an AR is of benefit. Most of the enterprise, a large number of the enterprise products, all the ones I was talking about earlier, are really assisted reality, in the sense that they're not superimposing imagery on top of the outside world. They're giving you a screen that can access information in much the way as your PC or your tablet or your mobile phone would, but it's voice controlled, it's hands-free, it's a much easier form factor to use. But it's not pretending to try and superimpose stuff over your field of view, which is something like, magically very pertinent. People are starting to actually see magically now, being able to write articles about it literally this week. I think we're further away from people in offices wearing HoloLens, wearing Magic Leap, wearing Daiquiri, wearing Meta than a lot of people think. It's actually, there's quite a long way to go. Now, a long way to go doesn't mean 20 years, but I think it's further than a lot of people think. There's people saying, in a year or two we'll all be wearing these. I don't think we're even close to that. Conversely, a year or two, routinely you being at the airport and seeing a technician working on an aircraft wearing a wearable, or someone at check-in or in monitoring the security line wearing a wearable. I think that's very realistic, but they're not going to be super duper augmented reality superimposing stuff over the outside world. They're just going to be information displays.
I think that's the biggest problem, is that there's so much information that people get lost in this information overload, and they say, you know what, I'm not going to make a decision because I don't VR and AR. So that's.
And remember, the only people really who have any long-term experience of using augmented reality, well, I'm talking about augmented reality in the sense it's being projected over the world. The only people who have 5-10 years experience doing that are pilots. That's the only job that has had 10 years experience of using imagery superimposed, registered over the world and stuff. Right. Number one, those pilots are very highly trained, very intelligent individuals. You've got a pretty small selection of society that you're picking there. Number two, they go through a lot of training to use it. And they will still tell you it can be confusing and they need to declutter sometimes because you can't, there's information being thrown at you. These are people who are trained to assimilate information, huge amounts of information, and think about 3D spatial awareness. And even they will tell you it's not trivial and that they've got to go through a lot of training, a lot of continual training to use it. You take any one of us just walking out in the street and put that on. We're a long way, as humans, a long way from being able to use that technology in our day-to-day lives. I mean, a training course, for consumers, can't really see that, can you? So it's got to, I think there's a lot of work got to be done to make the technology very easy and intuitive to use, and safe and effective, and to show real benefits. And I think that's where a lot of people are being a bit optimistic on that.
I think one of the benefits of GoldenEye is in terms of field service, and field service's biggest problem right now is the aging workforce, right? Where you're getting a lot of people that are taking their tribal knowledge and their experience in their warehouse, and they're going to be leaving. They're not transferring. So in terms of the aging workforce, you see AR as a real solution that these companies.
This whole combination of enterprise wearables like GoldenEye, combined with software tools that are coming through, like Interware's Workflow Faster, like LibreStream's Remote Expert, people like that, putting that together really addresses that problem. And that could well end up being one of the key drivers of adoption. In it, again, going back to airlines, aerospace, some of those industries have real problems with baby boomer retirement profiles, employment, the demographics of their workforce. And the software and the hardware together have to bring two benefits. One is that you can access that tribal knowledge, you can access the experts much more easily. But also, if you're more productive, you need less people. So you're getting more out of the people you have got, and you're also allowing them to be more effective without having this sort of long-term knowledge. And we've seen this, and we've seen in Interware they've done work with a couple of airlines in their maintenance hangars, and they're showing significant productivity improvements by adopting workflow, process management type software, and that's on in that instance on mobile phones and tablets, but the next logical move is then to go hands-free and to get the tablet or the phone out of the hand and put it onto the head.
Heads up.
And then they'll see another step change in productivity. So I think the combination, there's a whole series of things that all work together here. Better control of people's processes, better audit trails for what they're doing, hands-free, productivity improvements, addressing the aging workforce. This technology can address all of those simultaneously without having to compromise. That's the key thing. You're not going to be worse at something while you improve all the others. You can actually improve every part of the activity.
So I think it's interesting too, because what somebody told me was that what makes this technology great is that we no longer, like for an oil rig, we no longer have to send somebody out to the rig. They can actually see remote experts see what they see in real time, make a solution. I think for technicians in the field, saving multiple trips. Like this is what we need. This is what we're going to do. I think so. That's where the return on investment.
So if you have a wearable with a display and a camera and a communications link that can send photos and information, you can do things in a way that you haven't been able to do them. So you or I could have that. We can pull up the two key software capabilities are process management, process workflow, and remote expert capabilities. The hardware capabilities are communications, display, and a camera. You put all those 5 things together. You then turn up at a piece of equipment and you say,
sorry, that was that one.
It's now ringing on the
live video. Got
live video. Yeah,
live video.
It proves it's live. So you turn up at a piece of equipment here, and you say, all right, you'll scan the QR code or the barcode, and up in your screen it'll say this is a remote control for something. Yeah, and you will select by voice, because voice is clearly the way to do this. You don't want to start touching controls. You want to speak. You'll say, right, this controller isn't working. I want the quick fix process. And up it'll come, it'll say, right, process number 1 is remove the screws off the back. Process number 2 is take power off it, remove the battery. Process number 3 is look at these wires. And you go, oh, I'm having problems interpreting what I'm seeing here against what I'm seeing on the diagrams. So I'm not an expert on this product. Right, then you go to the remote expert software, put your device up, call them up on video or send a still image, call up Marc Reece, who's actually one of these older workers who said, look, I don't want to go to the rig anymore. I'll carry on working as long as I can stay in an office. You go, all right, hi Marc, I've got this issue. I've got to the stage where I've got it disassembled and I see the wires, but it doesn't match. This one's obviously been modified or something and doesn't match what I'm seeing in the documentation. So, okay, can you send me a photo? You then get the photo back showing, yeah, you need to disconnect this, you need to put the red wire into here, change this out, and by the way, this one hasn't been up rev, so you need to do something on this, and draws it onto the diagram. And you look in your screen and you go, oh, right, okay, ding, 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 ding. Great, thanks, Mark. That's, you know, you can do that now today. All of those bits now exist. It's now just a matter of deployment and getting it out there. I think if you think about dealing with, you know, legacy items of equipment, dealing with, you know, aging workforce, de-skilling workforce, dealing with people who have got expertise who don't necessarily want to be. It's not even effective to have them on the road. If you are the company's leading expert in a piece of telecoms equipment, how useful is it for us if you spend the morning on a plane getting delayed in Chicago, you then go to one site, you fix their equipment, you find you haven't got the spare parts, you go to a hotel, following day the spare parts are FedEx to you, you do the fix, you then spend the afternoon, you then get stuck in Charlotte on your way home because of the weather or something. You've done one fix in 2.5 days. If you sat in the office with technicians out there, you could be your sort of force multiplier. Your ability to leverage your expertise is massive because you can have people who are much more generic and can access your expertise much more easily.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest benefits. I guess my final question for you, and I know you've done a lot of research on this and analyzed a lot of data, in terms of, we talked about enterprise adoption, but you know, starting back when Google Glass first introduced a few years ago, and then kind of went by the wayside. Can you talk about how enterprises are coming along in terms of how it's grown over the last few years, and really when you see full scale adoption taking place, where this becomes, okay, we need this?
Yeah. So Google Glass is an interesting one because Google Glass was really promoted as a consumer product to start with, and it then had to reinvent itself as an enterprise product and has been successful as an enterprise product. Meanwhile, other products, RealWear, Vuzix, GoldenEye, Lenovo, Aristic, all the others essentially started out as enterprise products. So we have evidence of success with enterprise-focused companies. We also have evidence of pivoting from consumer and being successful in enterprise. So enterprise is clearly driving this market. Now, if you look at the market research, and this is backed up broadly by our sales figures, last year something like 25,000. I've seen various figures between 24 and 27,000 enterprise wearables were deployed. Not a huge number, not a super small number, but not a very big number either. This year, if you look at estimates and you look at the growth rates that the analysts are looking at, and this is again backed up by our sales data, it looks like the number's going to be something around twice that, 50-ish thousand. I've seen compound annual growth rates quoted of about 115% is what the sort of mean figure that analysts are looking at. So let's say it's roughly doubling. 115 is just a bit more than doubling every year. So, and I say, looking at that number, I can believe that number is correct this year. Now, 50,000, you know, that's starting to get serious. So if you continue that profile, you're into 100,000 next year, 110,000, something like that next year. You then start to talk about perhaps, yeah, that might be 50, in that 110,000, there might be 50 enterprises that are doing proper deployments, 1,000 units plus. It's certainly not all pilots when you get to 100,000 units. There's no way is it all pilots. I think once you get 50 big companies, whether they be power companies or construction companies or airlines or whoever, deploying over 1,000 units, you've got a proper market at that point. You start to be, it's a serious business at that point. And if the projections continue, you know, you're going to be talking close to 250,000 in 2020. So I think that's where we are, and that's why I say we're really on this change point from pilots in 2017, pilots and deployments in 2018, and then 2019, I think it gets serious. You start seeing real deployments in quantity, and that has issues for the suppliers. It's one thing to give someone a standalone pilot. When you do a proper deployment, you now got to worry about IT security. How do you fit into the enterprise's IT cybersecurity environment? Is the software all robust enough for that? Will it deploy, scale? Well, there's hurdles to be overcome. It's not just sudden instant success, and it's easy. There's work to be done again at that point. But I think we are, those of us who are close enough to it, like yourselves and your colleagues and me and my colleagues here and the guys in the software companies, we are all believers now. We can all see the trajectory coming.
But I guess finally, as I thought of this, what's one piece of advice you would give the industry as a whole to help scale adoption? I'm putting you on the spot, but if you could help scale adoption quicker, what's one piece of advice you'd give the industry?
I think the bit that people aren't necessarily giving the emphasis or putting the emphasis on that they perhaps should, the bit that they're perhaps not emphasizing or not prioritizing much as they should, is this whole tying into the enterprise's IT system. The whole security, privacy, all that bit. People are talking about it, but I'm not necessarily sure everyone is realizing just how much work will be taken, or it will take, to really get these big enterprises to say, yeah, I'm happy with this device in my enterprise. You think how much time and effort is spent on security software for PCs and things like that. I'm not sure there's enough work yet being put into all of that for these types of devices.
Greg, listen, I appreciate your time, and this will be this will go on for history, will be posterity purposes. But I really appreciate your insight and your industry knowledge. If people want to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold of you?
They can come through the Kopin Facebook page. They can come through Kopin's Twitter, or they can contact me at gtruman@kopin.co.uk, not .com. But yes, there's lots of ways. All the sales emails addresses for all of the companies as well.
And if you want to see Greg's speech from his AWE talk from AWE 2018, it's on the GoldenEye website at golden-i.com. You can go to the video page, and Greg's a featured video on our page because his talk really was fantastic. If you want to learn more, so we appreciate your time. I don't believe we have any questions. I don't think we do. Let me just see if anybody's asked a question. We don't. But if you want to get a hold of Greg, you can get a hold of Greg. If you want to get a hold of myself, you can get me on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Again, I'm Marc Reece, the Director of Digital Marketing for Kopin GoldenEye, and Greg Truman with Kopin. So we thank you for your time, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you very much.